the city, but Jacques longed for plantation life. So one day, when Jacques was exploring land, which was owned by his brother-in-law, Valcarem, he stumbled upon this majestic lane of oaks, which had been planted nearly 100 years before. Now he immediately knew he had found a place to bring together his young wife's love of entertaining and his own love of working the land. So he acquired the estate and 57 slaves and began building his dream home. Now Selina's father, Gilbert Joseph Pillier, was a well-known architect. In fact, he is credited with designing the original French Market and Café du Monde in New Orleans. He lovingly created this Greek Revival style of architecture for the young couple. But it's hard to imagine living here in the South in the summer without air conditioning. So Monsieur Pillier added many features to help keep the young couple cool. Come join us. It's okay. Now some of these features to help keep them cool includes the 13-foot veranda surrounding the entire house, 12.5-foot ceilings, and all of the walls are 16-inch thick solid brick. Also, all doors and windows face each other from opposite ends of the house to help with cross ventilation. Now the house took 2.5 years to complete, using mostly materials that are found here in the plantation. The only things that were brought in was the slate for the roof, the marble that once covered the downstairs floors, the nails, glass, and hinges. But by the time the house was complete, Selina could hardly wait to start hosting the most elaborate dinner parties. Come join us. So during these parties, many of her guests would include her friends who were fresh out of finishing school being courted by their beaux. But these young couples were never kept alone. They were always kept an eye on by a federal bullseye mirror, like this one on the wall. Its convex shape allowed you to see every corner of the room with just a single glance. So the chaperone or parent could step into the hall and still knew what was going on inside of the room. Now another way the young couples were kept in line was a quarters candle, like this one. When the young man would enter the house, the girl's father would either raise or lower the candle. If he liked the young man, he'd raise the candle very high. But if not, he would lower the candle down. Everyone knew that when the candle burnt down to the top of the candle holder, it was time for him to say goodnight and their date was over. This is where the common saying, short end of the stick, has come from. Now after dinner, everyone would return here to the parlor. On especially cool nights, fires were lit here in the fireplace. But the women had to use heat shields, like this one, to protect their heavily made-up faces. Now makeup of the time was made of beeswax. So they wanted to make sure that their faces would not melt into their laps. Now also after dinner, the young men were offered a glass of rum, which was made here on the plantation. However, for the ladies, it was considered unladylike for women to drink hard liquor. But Selina always had her way around things, and so she would offer her young friends a piece of fruit, which had been soaking in this exact same rum for quite some time. So it was actually stronger than what the men were drinking. Now, as you move throughout the house, I'd like to point out that most of the pieces of furniture, all of the furniture dates back to the same time period of the 1800s, but we only have one original piece of furniture, and I'll point that out when we move upstairs. Now, do you have any questions so far?
Do they have children?
Yes, our original owners had 6 children. Unfortunately, only 3 lived until adulthood. Any other questions? All right, so you can now follow me across the hall and we'll move on to the dining room. I forgot to mention, for those of you who joined us a couple minutes later, these are our original owners, Jacques and Selina Rowan. So that's what I'm talking about throughout the tour. Excuse me. Two of them died at the age of 2 of yellow fever, and one of their daughters died at the age of 12 of tuberculosis.
This is more like what it probably was, though, don't you? That's the type. It's like Vicky's kind of, you know.
Yep.
Yep.
So welcome to the dining room. It was known to be the most elegant rooms in the Creole household. Notice how low the table is set to the ground. This is because the average French Creole man was about 5 feet 4, and the average lady was under 5 feet. This is also why the doorknobs are set so low in the house. Now notice on the table that the silverware is placed face down. This is a French Creole tradition because on the back of the silverware would be engraved the family crest, or initials. Unfortunately, this is not the Roman's original, so these are not engraved. But also notice how large the silverware is for such small people. At that time, silverware was made of pure silver, and it was a way of showing wealth. So when a guest would enter the room, they'd immediately know how wealthy their hosts were. Now this glass object is a fly catcher. Selena would fill the bottom with sugar water or molasses and just a touch of poison. Insects would enter through the bottom, become trapped, and soon die. But she did not want her guests to have to witness this during dinner. So she covered it with a delicate handkerchief and made it her decoration. Now I'm sure you've all noticed this large object over the table. This is called a punka, or a shoe fly fan. It's attached on a cord and pulley system, and from the time that the first guest would enter the room until the time that the last guest would leave, a young servant boy would sit in the corner pulling the fan. But the fan had to be pulled fast enough to keep all of the guests cool, yet slow enough not to up candles right below. Now the most elaborate meals were prepared in the kitchens by the slaves, but the kitchens were always kept separate from the house. This was done so for 2 reasons. First of all, to keep heat out during the summertime. Secondly, in case of fire, they would not lose the entire house. Now, Oak Alley's kitchen has burned down twice over the years, and I will show you the original location later on in your tour. Now, I'd like to point out these 2 portraits on the wall. On this side is Mr. Bob Graham, Jacques' brother-in-law. On this side was Josephine, his sister. These are the 2 people they purchased the land from. And the door that you see on this side would have led to the butler's pantry at that time. And this is where the slaves would have made the final preparations on the meals before serving it to the guest. We now use this room today as our plantation office. Now, as you might remember in the parlor, all of the downstairs floors were originally marble. We still have a piece of the original marble at the base of the fireplace. If you can't see it now, you will have a chance to exit. But you can notice that it's kind of cracked. After the Armands lost the house, I'll tell you more about that when we move upstairs. But it's purchased by the Sabral family. And they had 2 sons who liked to race their horses up and down the alleyway. Well, their dad would let them open the front door and the back door and race them straight through the house. Now this, of course, ruined the marble in the hallway. And then later on, it was sold to an agriculture partnership who just used the land for farming. So the house was left abandoned for a period of about 12 years. In this time, cattle and bats broke in, nearly destroying the rest of the house. So that's the reason why we no longer have the marble flooring downstairs. And I'll tell you how it became its beautiful state today when I tell you about our later owners upstairs. Now, do you all have any questions so far? I'm sorry, what's that? There are a lot of movies that were filmed here. The first one was Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte. I don't know the full list, but whenever you sit your tour, there's a list right outside, so I'll be sure to point that out. So we're going to make our way upstairs, but because of limited space, I'm going to go ahead and explain the first two rooms down here. Now at the top of the stairs to the left is the multi-purpose room. This room was used for three main reasons. First of all, a guest bedroom. Notice that the bed, its headboard, can be removed and it resembles an oversized rolling pin. Mattresses of the time were made of Spanish moss and horsehair, so in the night they become very lumpy. In the morning, a servant would have to come in, beat the mattress flat, and roll it smooth. Now this process took up to 2 hours to make all of the beds in the house, so once they were made, no one was allowed to sit or lay on it until that night. Now the second purpose is a sick or isolation room. Whenever a family member or guest would become ill, they'd be placed in a room separate from the rest of the members in the house. Now the third purpose is a mourning room. If someone died, the mattress would be removed from the bed and replaced with a wooden plank. This piece of wood would then be covered with a black cloth and the body would be laid out for viewing. Underneath the bed, a bowl of ice would be placed to keep the body as cool as possible. Now the French Creoles were very superstitious, and they believed that when someone died here in the house, their spirit would linger around for quite some time. They also believed that if the spirit saw its reflection in the mirror, it would become trapped for eternity. And so to prevent this, they would cover all of the mirrors in the house with a type of black netting, which you'll notice when we move upstairs. Now the room across the hall is the family nursery. This is where Jacques and Selena's 6 children would have slept. Unfortunately, they lost 2 of their sons before the age of 2 of yellow fever and 1 of their daughters at the age of 12 of tuberculosis. Now do keep in mind all of 6 children would have stayed in this room, but 3 of them died at a very young age, and when a boy reached the age of 15, he was forced to move out into what is called a Gorson year. And this is just another building on the plantation where he would sleep at night, but he was still allowed to participate in any other family activities. So you can now follow me upstairs and we'll view these 2 rooms. I just please ask that you use the handrail against the wall because it is sturdier. And on your way out of the dining room, if you could not see the marble flooring from where you are, you can take a look at that. And underneath Miss Josephine's portrait is some of Jacques and Selena's original silverware. So you can now follow me upstairs. So as you come up to the stairs, to the left is the multi-purpose room. This room was used as a sick room, a guest bedroom, and a mourning room. From the black netted mirrors and the rolling pin headboard, across the hall, the family nursery.
Pagbigyan natin yung iba.
Remember this
Okay.